Welcome to The Unusual History of Everything, the podcast that uncovers the unusual history of everything around us. I'm Karen Lacey.
And I'm Melanie Dellis. On this episode, we investigate one potential reason why so many houses creak and what could be responsible for that missing left sock.
That's really important because sometimes it's the right sock.
Correct.
Or both socks I'm finding.
Can you even tell which is which, left and right?
No.
I didn't.
Well, maybe your foot impressions, you have the big toe,
yeah.
Or however you wear the shoe.
Right. Or those socks with the hole, with the toes that are in the socks. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. The footies.
Is that
I have no idea. I don't know.
Individual toe holes?
Yeah. I just call them footy socks.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I guess they wouldn't make sense. Toe socks, maybe, with what they're called. Let's say they're called toe socks.
Okay, I don't know.
No, I just have to say, though, there's got to be a Domovoy in our laundry room because I've been missing multiple pairs of socks. So, I can't find any of them. I put them down to go to the laundry. They don't come back.
I know. Same thing happens in my house. I'll be the one to put all the socks in the washer and dryer, and I still lose it. I don't even know how that happens.
I know.
It's got to be a Domovoy.
It must be a Domovoy, although I've been calling it a gremlin all these years.
Well, that's the interesting thing.
I feel really bad because that's probably why it's happening, is because I've been thinking it was a gremlin and probably making the Domovoy mad.
Well, that's the interesting thing about something like a Domovoy. Depending on what country you're in, it's a gremlin, it's a goblin, it's a brownie, it's a Domovoy. It could be many different things.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I know.
So let's talk about Domovoys. Every house has its quirks, its moans and groans, its creaks and cracks. Most people attribute these sounds to the house settling or the wind blowing against the windows and the walls. However, many people believe that there's something just a tad more supernatural to blame it on. Some blame it on brownies, some point the finger at elves, but in Russia and the Ukraine, the Domovoy is the culprit.
Like most cultures share a common origin story, so too do they share common mysterious creatures that do similar things to annoy and or help humans. But today we're in Eastern Europe, and for the people there, the Domovoy is a common housemate. These little guys are covered in hair from head to toe like a tiny little Bigfoot, but with gray beards. They're around about a foot tall and usually wear red and blue clothing, sort of like a gnome, Karen.
And also like a gnome, they're no girls, right?
Well, it's different depending on which Eastern European culture has the mythology, whatever story that you're listening to. Sometimes they say it can take the form of an old woman. Sometimes it's the form of an old man because they're really considered house spirits as opposed to like a gnome, which is real.
Right. And with gnomes, there was always men and then it became men and women.
Right.
So, okay.
And in some, we'll hear about later on in the podcast, in some mythologies in Eastern Europe, they talk about the Domovoy as taking the shape of whoever it is the leader in the house, the head of the household. Mm-hmm. So if it's a man or a woman or whatever, they'll take that shape, or they'll take the shape of the oldest person in the house, which you'll hear about later.
Later traditions describe them as having tails and small horns. However, this could be an added description from Eastern Orthodox Christianity that began associating pagan house spirits with the devil in an attempt to eliminate the beliefs. The belief in the Domovoy is definitely pagan. Some traditions say that they are part of an ancestor cult, while others say they are evil spirits thrown from the skies that landed on human houses and eventually grew to be like people.
Now that's interesting. I'm going to interrupt you for a second because remember when we were doing our podcast on, I think, gnomes, wasn't it? Gnomes? Where we talked about how they fell from the sky.
I think it was dwarves. Because remember dwarves?
No, it was dwarves. It was
dwarves
gnomes,
came
dwarves.
From, it was dwarves first,
elves.
And then we had elves and gnomes and all this other stuff. But the original was they were thrown from the sky.
Yeah, we talked about maybe they were fairies, or did we talk about the fairies in that story? Fell from the sky and landed in the trees and then became I don't know. I'm going to have to go back there and read it. It's really a good podcast you guys should listen to.
Yeah, I think it's the one with the dwarves because I remember them coming from the original, one of the stories was saying they came from there and then kind of created culture and stuff on Earth after
their
that.
Celestial dust became fairies and interacted with the gnomes, the dwarves, the gnomes, the elves, and all that stuff. It was cool. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did mean to interrupt you.
However they got there, humans have long believed in them and their ability to cause mischief. Perhaps that stems from their previously evil side.
Maybe. After all, one of the key traits of a Domovoy is their love of mischief when they feel they've been treated disrespectfully or have been neglected, or really if they're just annoyed by the humans in the house. I totally can relate to the Domovoy. I will get mischievous when I'm treated disrespectfully, if I've been neglected, or if I'm just annoyed.
Yep, totally.
I don't know. I don't know what that says about me. Anyway, a surefire way to annoy a Domovoy, by the way, is to say bad words or forget to clean up after yourself because they hate a mess. But don't worry, you'll know your Domovoy is unhappy because it will break the dirty dishes, pound on the walls, bang pots and pans while you're asleep, sour the milk, moan angrily, and track muddy footprints all over your floors. And if you have a real nasty one that hasn't quite given up its evil tendencies, it will suffocate you in your sleep.
Yikes.
I know.
Kind of sounds similar to a banshee with the moaning, by the way. Mm-hmm. A succubus with the sleep suffocation.
Yes. An incubus, too.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yes. And also, like, basically everything. Like brownies and gnomes. Especially when you think of, like, brownies and gnomes when they're bored, right? When this happens, they'll pass the time playing tricks on people in the house. Ever wonder where that one sock went, like we were talking about earlier? Mm-hmm. Or what about the Tupperware lids?
Yes, the Tupperware lids.
Oh my God. Or
all the time.
Or the forks. Like you're like, wait, I just washed all the forks. Where'd they all go?
Yeah, or you put it on the counter and then you turn around to chop some cheese and you turn back around and the fork is not there. I mean, seriously.
Well, honestly, missing items are usually the work of a trickster, right? Usually a Domovoy will only make his moves at night when the people are asleep. And this can be a little creepy, though, especially because they enjoy gliding their hairy hands across people's sleeping faces.
Ew, definitely creepy. But it could feel good, too, like when you're tickling your kid's face with a feather or something to help them go to sleep. I used to do that all the time. Sometimes I even do it to myself. Like, I just, like, tickle it.
I don't do the feather thing, but I definitely, like, I kind of trace
around
my
their
finger
face.
Around their face. Lily likes that.
It feels good. Actually, part of the Domovoy mythology is that they give people clues to things that could happen. So for the hairy hands on your face thing, if you wake up and he's doing that to you and it feels warm and soft, it's a sign of good luck. So not creepy, right? Mm-hmm. Well, maybe a little creepy,
maybe.
But a good creepy. But if his hands are cold and rough like a cow tongue, that's bad luck. They also howl to warn their people of trouble. And my favorite, they'll tug really hard on girls' hair to warn them if a man they're talking to is bad. See, I need my Domovoy to tell me that. Like if a guy that I'm talking to is not for me, I want my hair pulled, and I'll not by that guy, but by the Domovoy, so that I know to like run, head for the hills.
That would be helpful. Mm-hmm. But can you see one? And where did they sleep, by the way?
Question.
Well, Domovoys usually stay hidden from humans, preferring dark corners or behind the stove. But it's best to leave them be and not look for them, as it can be bad luck for you if you find one. Mm-hmm. You'll know that you have one in your house because you hear his footsteps, little things will go missing, and pets will make more noise at night when they're playing with a Domovoy. And of course, if you wake up with his hairy hand stroking your face.
Yep, that's a definite clue. The main duty of a Domovoy is to protect the family and warn them about bad things or people, and that includes forest spirits who like to enter homes and play pranks, and witches who tend to steal cows. It's for all those reasons and more that it's in a family's best interest to keep a Domovoy happy. It's easy to do that, but the most common way is to leave milk and bread near the stove. That's their favorite. Some say they like tobacco too, so leaving them some of that is good. But there's one night a year, March 30th, when the Domovoy turn into tricksters from dawn to midnight, sort of like Devil's Night, which is the night before Halloween. I think that might only be a Midwest thing, but it's like the night before Halloween. In Michigan, we called it Devil's Night, and that's when everybody would play pranks on houses. You know, you egg the houses, you TP the houses. And in downtown Detroit, some of the people would get crazy and they burn down the buildings. But like that is similar to what the Domovoy does on March 30th. And I still don't know why March 30th was that particular, why that date was so special. I couldn't figure that out. But that is the day that they go nuts, right? And so on that day, you have to bribe them with a lot of cake and some stew to get them to not be mean to you and like do all these tricks on your house and your family. Yeah.
Well, Melanie, have you ever heard of that Russian tradition of sitting in silence for a minute before leaving on a trip?
Yes, I have, Karen.
I have too.
Did you see that on 90 Day Fiancé? Because I did.
Oh my God, no way. That's where I saw it too.
Did you really? I was like, are they seriously just sitting in silence like right now?
I
on
know.
TV. Why are they doing that?
It's so funny. I don't watch that show all the time, and every now and then I do. And that's the one episode that I remember being like, oh, that's like a thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it makes sense, though.
Well, it does now.
It does
well,
now.
It's about to.
Okay.
About to.
I have to say, at the time when I saw it, though, I thought they were just being calm and praying for a safe trip. I had no idea that it had to do with appeasing the Domovoy.
I had no idea either.
Yeah, so apparently doing this is a respectful way to say goodbye to your Domovoy when you need to be gone for a while. And if you have to move out of your house, you need to make sure you invite your Domovoy to come with you to your new place. Long ago, people would leave a bast shoe, which is a shoe made from plant material, for a Domovoy to hop into. But today, people leave a slipper out, and once he's in there, they pack him up and go to the new house.
This is still a modern tradition. Mm-hmm. Now, whether or not they still do it because of the Domovoy, I'm not sure. But they do definitely have that tradition to this day. Interesting. Well, Slavic mythology also has the Domovoy, but theirs is more like ancestor worship, as they believe the Domovoy is the soul of one of the dead family members. When they build a new house, the oldest would enter first because they would be the one who dies first and becomes the Domovoy. Sounds morbid, but they did have a loophole to avoid the oldest dying quickly. They could sacrifice a goat, bird, or a lamb and bury it under the first stone of the house. If they did that, it meant they would not have the protection of a Domovoy until the eldest family member eventually did die. When that happened, they would then become the house Domovoy.
I have to say, though, it brings up all these questions for me because I'm like, well, what if the oldest person lived and someone else died that was younger? Did they become the Domovoy, or is there just no Domovoy until it's the oldest?
I think, now I'm not sure 100%, but I think that they have to wait until the oldest person dies.
So there's just no Domovoy.
Right. Yeah, and they do without the protection. If they don't have the Domovoy until the eldest dies, they don't have the protection against the witches and elves.
I just have to say, witches get such a bad rap.
They steal cows.
They steal cows now? I feel like people just attribute oh, well, that must be a witch.
Yeah, I mean, clearly,
when it's
clearly it's a witch.
When it's clearly probably, a brownie or a Domovoy or something else, and probably not a witch at all.
I agree.
Well, that brings us to the end of our episode. You can follow the Unusual History of Everything podcast on Instagram at the Unusual History of Everything, and on Facebook at the Unusual History of Everything podcast. And find our show notes on www.musecuratorial.com. The Unusual History of Everything is written, produced, and directed by Melanie Dellis and Karen Lacey.
New episodes air every Tuesday on all podcast outlets. Be sure to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode and leave us a review. You can also see photos from our episodes and more on our website, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks for listening. I'm Melanie Dellis.
And I'm Karen Lacey, your host for The Unusual History of Everything. Da, da, da.